killing another human being. It's brutal.
If you were 18 now and you're watching these videos, would you make the same decision?
More scared doing that than at any point in Afghanistan.
Andrew, thanks for joining us again to talk about Ukraine, and we are now going towards the 5th year of this war, and just some analysis of what we're seeing from your past as a parachute regiment soldier to the rank of major. We're going to talk about drones today, and just really what you've seen on your trips to Ukraine. I mean, when you were in Afghanistan, you did 3 Herrick's. Drones barely existed. I don't think there were any.
No, we once had one
threat.
called Green Eyes, right? I finally got given it for a patrol. Yeah. I asked to see it, and then actually it malfunctioned. So all I got was green zone, sky, green zone, and it kind of, it wasn't quite the sophistication that we see today.
December, the Ukrainians said they killed 35,000 Russian troops with FPV drones alone. I mean, incredible, mass that they're using on the battlefield. When you first saw them, being used in this situation, what was your reaction?
Well, it was certainly an interesting experience going forward to the front lines, because you're well within the kind of FPV drone strike range. So the first thing you're doing is trying to stay within the electronic countermeasures bubble of the Ukrainian army vehicle in front of you, which was interesting, trying to do that at 60 miles an hour across a ploughed field in a 4x4.
Yeah.
But what I found is the tension it brings up in you. And I was there with another former soldier as well. And we were just wired the whole time, because anything in the sky you're jumping at, worried that it might be a drone coming at you to kill you. And it's
I'll start this video because this is a Russian dismounted attack. I think there was 14 guys involved in this. It doesn't end well for them, put it that way. We don't show the ending clearly, but this is how, and it is fairly quick as well, and how good the Ukrainians have got at doing this. I mean, in Afghan, the main threat was, you had air support, obviously, from helicopters, from fast jets. Now this is effectively your air support, and this is a particularly interesting one, because this is some troops who are effectively using drones like you would have perhaps used artillery in the past.
Yeah, where they're guiding your assault in, as well as providing the fire support at the same time, which is really interesting. But look, you've got this battle in Ukraine between the drones. So you've got the daylight hours where everything is locked down from the sky and movement is almost impossible. Nighttime is where a lot more of the manoeuvre happens, but then you've got squads of drones out hunting people the whole time. And then on top of that, you've got the countermeasures battle. So, that's really fascinating. But what we've got here is, essentially, rather than fire, throw a grenade, or rather than call for artillery fires, you've got these suicide drones that can then fly in over your heads. They give you that intimate, explosive fire support that you need to get the break-in happening. And that's what we're seeing here, is where they've managed to get close enough to the buildings that they can then start breaching through the walls and start clearing their objective.
So you might have had a JTAC, in those situations, calling in jets. They've got somebody doing something similar, presumably, to call in drones for tactical reasons on the battlefield.
Yeah, and what's really useful here is you can see just how close they're getting to the explosions. It's essentially a flying hand grenade. Because if you're calling for artillery, if you're calling for fast air support, you've got a huge safety distance. You need to be a good couple of 100 metres back from those big bombs from the cannon when it comes in, to make sure you don't get brassed up by your own side. Whereas here, when you've got something that's only the size of a hand grenade, your assaulting troops can be an awful lot closer when the drone goes over the top and blows up.
I mean, it's absolutely terrifying. I mean, the other thing, obviously, is being seen, what that actually means now on the battlefield, because they've got thermal ability to know where you are at night. They can find you anywhere, as we're going to see in shortly. I mean, how the art of concealment for the modern soldier, very different from even when you trained.
Yeah, and a lot of that just involves getting underground.
Yeah.
It's not even trying to conceal yourself on the surface. If you're on the surface, you are so exposed. Any movement gets picked up. And therefore, digging on those defensive positions, certainly for the Ukrainians, has been huge. And then it's relying on the weather conditions to be your cover for you. If the FPV drones can't get in the air, then you've got a bit of manoeuvre. If you've got they do have electronic warfare where when you go forward into the danger zone, as it were, they've got almost like a traffic light system. So they give you red, amber, green depending on the drone threat risk.
Right.
and so you understand what you're going into, and that's all enabled by electronic warfare, by detection systems.
That's what, to cross the kill zone to get to a location.
Yeah,
for instance,
that's right.
Yeah. Okay. So that's like being on a red and the black, or whatever you would have been in Afghan on a when you were going to a fob or something. I mean, and in terms of the sheer numbers of drones that they're flying, you were in this control room. I think you said 150 odd screens.
There are 150 feeds coming in at any one time. But I visited the drone factory, so it's somewhat like a cottage industry in the south of Ukraine. And I'll be careful what I say because I don't want to give away anything in terms of location. But the sort of the small room we went to where they were making, that was just one of many drone factories. They could turn out a good couple of hundred in there a month. And they're just making these FPV drones, even the bigger Baba Yaga, the Vampires, they're making them there as well. Incredibly cheap. They can make it in huge numbers, and it's really close to the front, so they can get the stuff to where it needs to be really quickly as well. And it's a very different way to procurement than perhaps we do, where we still haven't got an Ajax after 10 years or whatever it is. This is a very different beast when it comes to actually making the kit you need for the front line.
Yeah. And even when you see the British Army training now, they will train with a few drones, and I understand why they do it like that. They can't have hundreds of them, but that sheer mass, I've seen footage where they've got the 7 or 8 of them flying around at once. How do you replicate that in training?
Yeah, hunting in packs. Look, we're going to have to find a way, and we're going to have to get better at buying cheaper kit, maybe even making it ourselves. But you have to be able to replicate this, otherwise you're not going to be able to train the troops properly to deal with it.
Going back to the concealment, what you did in Helmand, for instance, you didn't really have to do a great deal of concealment, I guess, considering how it looks in Ukraine.
No, very little. I think that was one of the problems we had, is that the enemy pretty much knew where we were at all times. Our fobs were lockdown locations. We didn't really go anywhere else unless we were opening a new fob somewhere else. So the enemy always had an idea of where we were, always had an idea of what routes we were using, and was able to IED those. So that was a real challenge for us. Now, even if they find your fob, you're in real trouble. And that's the problem you've got here. And actually, you're seeing here a civilian house. Quite often, that is what the Ukrainians certainly are using to sort of store their headquarters, small pockets of troops dotted all over villages and towns. It is that concealment amongst the people, which does cause some sort of, some slight legal and ethical dilemmas, actually. But the alternative is you're in a very obviously military location and it gets malleted and destroyed straight off the bat. So it's a real challenge.
When you say 148 screens, are they using AI just in any way to try and, or are they actually just doing eyes on those screens all the time?
Well, you've got the operator who's controlling the drone, and they've got a relative degree of freedom. If they see a target, they can hit it. And obviously they report that up the chain, and then headquarters can look into whatever footage they want.
So that chain of command decision making still exists. Somebody has to okay it from above, or they're given relative autonomy.
No, they've got a quite high degree of autonomy. Yeah. Quite high. I mean, obviously, if it's a bigger target or a bigger strike, that's when battalion headquarters clicks in and helps them coordinate the attack properly. Because an armoured vehicle will take 12 to 15 FPV strikes.
Right.
It can take quite a lot of hits before it goes down and the armour gets penetrated.
Yeah, because we only ever see the kind of successful end of those strikes. We don't necessarily see all the ones that have happened before.
Yeah.
Again, that speaks to the whole mass, doesn't it? Of how many they're getting through.
Yeah.
That we have to try and replicate.
Ploughing through these drones is like almost like normal ammunition in some cases.
And you've crossed this kill zone that we hear a lot about to get to a position in a vehicle.
Yeah.
And you are an experienced battle-hardened soldier, if you don't mind me saying so. And even you were saying how terrifying that is.
I was more scared doing that than at any point in Afghanistan.
Right.
Which gives you an idea of how scary it is.
Yeah.
And it could be because I'm just older and wiser, as opposed to being a 26-year-old tyro. But certainly it does focus the mind. And it is that once you're forward on the defensive positions, you're pretty much safe unless they spot you. If you can get in there without being seen, you're all good. The real issue is that route in, and that's why they're having such challenges with things like Kazakhstan, because actually they just can't get people out, because there is that zone where if anything moves, it dies.
I mean, and without saying exactly where they are, because we never really quite know how close these ops rooms and stuff are to the front line. They're not a million miles away, presumably, because they have to either they're bouncing the signal with the relay, or they're fairly close to where those drones are flying.
Yeah, I mean the as much as I say, is the buffer zone is 12 to 15k, and it's inside that.
Okay, so not that far.
Yeah.
And from your sort of training as a para, many moons ago, what training you think still stands the test of time, and what really is now outdated, particularly in this kind of drone environment?
I think all of it. It's all good. I mean, it's just how we adapt it to the future environment. It's the critical thing here. So cover and concealment, cam and concealment, both really important. Fire and movement, really important. How to get from A to B tactically without being seen. These are all principles that are universal, that will stand the test of time. But it's how you do it when you've got 150 eyes in the sky in a small area, all hunting you at the same time.
Yeah.
And learning how we adapt our current posture to those lessons going forward. That's the real challenge.
And if you were 18 now and thinking about a career in the military, the parachute regiment, and you're watching these videos, would you make the same decision?
Do you know what? I had this exact conversation with James, who is a Special Forces veteran, and he and I both expressed a scepticism about how much we would have enjoyed it were us in that situation. So it is incredibly challenging.
Because of the fear factor, or just
the fear factor, and just how unpleasant it is to live in the field like that for days on a time. It's not like they had fobs. It's not like they had the ability to go back to somewhere like Bastion and get a hot meal and a shower. These guys are just stuck on that front line. They come back out for a bit of R&R and then they're straight back in again, and it's brutal.
Yeah, and just talk to me also. I mean, the role and the status of a drone pilot in Ukraine. You would have met these people. They are obviously they're prize targets for the Russians to take out.
Yeah.
But these guys are very, very skilled at flying these things now. How do they get to that skill set? I mean, some of them will have killed hundreds of Russian soldiers.
Yeah, it's remarkable. And we were with the Baba Yaga, which is the Vampire, the big sort of heavy drone. They can carry a sort of mortar around underneath, and they fly over and drop the mortar on the position. And these guys have a 4x4 truck. It's just an old technical Hilux kind of thing.
Yeah.
3 of them in a team. Obviously, lots of teams of 3 in a platoon. And every night they're going out, and they are the Russians' number one target. The Russians are hunting them above all else. And so it's that real game of cat and mouse and skill every night. Incredibly brave guys. Real pleasure to sort of hang with them for an afternoon and see them doing their training before they went out on a night mission.
Yeah. I mean, this is interesting as well. For instance, this footage here, you can see how skillful those pilots are at getting into everywhere.
Remarkable.
There is no hiding place anymore. How does it affect morale if you would those guys are watching videos of Ukrainian soldiers being killed by drones, etc. You never had that in Afghan. You didn't sit down, look at your phone, and watch British lads dying, did you?
No, not at all. But the difference with us and the Ukrainians right now is they are in a war for national survival, and we're not. I think my answer to my previous question would have been a lot different had it been the UK invaded by Russia, and it needing British troops to be on that front line. I think that's a very different ball game. And a lot of the Ukrainians I've certainly spoken to frame it in that way. Like, yes, it's horrifying, but you have to be good at soldiering, and they take a lot of pride in being good at soldiering.
They seem naturally good soldiers.
They're hardy. Yeah, and actually, if you go to the south,
very motivated, because you would be. But
and if you go to the south of Ukraine, it's not, it's not a luxury life. It's a very poor part of the world. These people are used to living quite hard. Even when you just go around the homes of people who are, who are down near that sort of south of Zaporizhia, that kind of area, they are hardy people, and they adapt very well to this. And they genuinely hate Russians and genuinely want to kick them out of their country, which is. That's as good as motivation gets, quite frankly.
Yeah, I'll show this footage, or some of it at least, because this was something that came up recently. This is a Russian soldier who it doesn't end well for him in the end. This isn't him dying, I have to say, just to point that out, but because they put 12 drones on this one guy to finish him off eventually. Now that just shows you. I mean, I asked you before about the British Army being ready for this level of attrition, this brutality. That is something that I don't know whether they are. If somebody's going to get 12 drones put on them.
Yeah, and look, war is brutal, and that hasn't changed. You go and speak to some of my friends who served in the Falklands. My friend Paul was shot in the Falklands, and he would probably tell you it was quite an unpleasant experience. War is hell, and it doesn't matter if you're in Ukraine or if you're in the Falklands or if you're anywhere else in the world. Ultimately, when it comes to killing another human being, it's brutal. The fact that we're able to capture it on video these days is, it's a slightly different beast. But it doesn't change the fact that all war is always horrible. And if you go speak to someone who was at the Somme, or someone who was at a Napoleonic charge, I'm sure were they able to, they would tell you the same.
And the other innovation, if you like, that we've seen a lot of late is UGVs. This is a Ukrainian UGV. We'll see a Russian one in a second, but we've been to Estonia, actually seen the factory where they make some of these bases, but without the 50 cal on top of it. I mean, this is proper Terminator sort of stuff, really.
Yeah, tactically,
and these are holding ground. They're doing lots of things.
Well, tactically, they're a great reaction to what Russia's doing. So Russia's trying to find the seams between Ukrainian positions. They're down in these strong points now rather than the long trenches, and so you can get between strong points, and that's what Russia's trying to do. And yet these are now able to guard flanks. They're able to guard those seams between positions, and that's a huge battlefield enhancement, especially if you can have one of those going forward with you into the assault as like intimate fire support. And ultimately, I think what Ukraine is trying to do is replace what they can on the front line with automation, because they haven't got enough soldiers, and the fewer soldiers that have to do this stuff, the more soldiers there are to do the stuff they actually need them to do. So it's a great example of a real battlefield enhancement.
And again, go back to the British Army, this is something you think we need to really invest in?
We certainly need to look at how we get people in and out of that zone, because we talked about soldiers dying, and actually that's one of the killer things here, is not getting soldiers who've been injured away from the front where they can get the medical treatment they need. And we've seen, you saw a glimpse of the mall, which is like almost like the casket on tracks. Having something like that where you can get forward and get your troops back to medical care where they're needed, really, really important.
And are Western armies actually internalising these lessons from Ukraine on the drones thing particularly, do you think? Or, I mean, are they just talking the talk in a lot of instances?
Well, at the moment, our procurement's not where it needs to be. I've spoken to friends of mine who, commanded battalions recently, and they've got a drone platoon with a couple of drones, and, we're at the very start line of this, when actually we arguably need to be running, if not sprinting, at this point. But it's a matter of cost, it's a matter of training people, it's a matter of having the disposability in the system. So, what happens if you break your drone in training? Is it going to be easily replaced, or are you going to be waiting a year to 6 months to actually get another one into the unit? All these questions need to be asked. But, our young soldiers need to be able to understand how not to be seen, and then if they are seen, what to do about it. And those are the two most critical lessons when it comes to
So I mean, if you were going to redesign British Army training, basic training, to reflect this drone evolution in Ukraine, what would you put into it?
Well, I think an emphasis on the digging is critical. We do dig, but we don't dig enough, and we dig far too slowly. And also the ability to sort of live in that cover is really challenging as well. We all learn how to sit in a shell scrape, which is on the surface with a poncho over the top. Doing that for 24 hours at a time is pretty degrading. Living in a hole in the ground for months at a time is incredibly difficult to do. It's psychologically, physically, the degradation you get, as well as then having to pop up and fight and then maybe move if your position's exposed. This is really difficult stuff. So I wouldn't necessarily change British Army training completely, but I would certainly make sure our troops know how to live rough.
And is every British soldier going to have to become drone capable, able to fly one?
No, I don't think so. No? I think specialist drone platoons is the way forward, because as we've seen in earlier clips, you still need those guys who can get into the trench with a rifle and grenade and get through it and take out the human aspects. But we certainly need to have a lot more drones, and we certainly need to be a lot better at integrating them into how we operate, both offensively and defensively.
Andrew, thanks very much for that. Next time we're going to be talking about the tactical situation in Ukraine, and analyse some of the videos that we've seen. And if you've enjoyed this episode with Andrew, please like and subscribe to our channel, Forces News YouTube channel, and join us on the next episode. Thanks for watching. For more from BFBS Forces News, like and subscribe to our channel.